They assumed it was suicide. The human built instead. Part 1. The Verdict. Commander sat in her office on Station Omega-9, reading the same file for the third time. Her four eyes blinked slowly as she tried to understand what she was looking at. The file was simple. A human wanted to settle on a planet. Humans wanted to settle on planets all the time. That was normal. What was not normal was the planet this human had chosen. Earth Designation 7. The name alone told you everything you needed to know. It was the seventh planet the humans had found that reminded them of their home world. But this one was different from the others. This one was a death trap. I pulled up the survey reports. 3 separate teams had visited the planet over the past 10 years. 3 teams of trained scientists with the best equipment the Galactic Authority could provide. All 3 teams had said the same thing. Do not settle this planet. Do not even try. The first report was from a team. They had lasted 6 days on the surface before requesting emergency evacuation. The air at ground level was toxic during the night hours. A thick mist rose from the soil after sunset, filled with chemicals that burned the lungs and skin. The team leader had lost 2 fingers before they figured out what was happening. The second report was from a mixed team of Inhumans. They had tried to build underground shelters to escape the toxic mist. They had failed. Something lived beneath the soil, large things with many legs and sharp teeth. The team called them diggers. The diggers had destroyed 3 shelters in one night. No one died, but it was close. The third report was the longest. A team of scientists had spent 3 months studying the planet from orbit before sending down robots. The robots found more problems. The plants were carnivorous. Not all of them, but enough. The smaller ones ate insects and small animals. The larger ones could eat a full-grown. The fungal network that covered the forest floor was even worse. It dissolved most building materials within weeks. Metal, plastic, synthetic fiber. The fungus ate it all. I closed the reports and opened the settlement request again. The human's name was. She was 34 years old. She had worked as an environmental engineer on 3 different colony worlds. She had no family listed, no emergency contacts, no one who would miss her if she disappeared. That was the part that bothered her the most. She had been working for the Resettlement Authority for 22 years. She had seen many strange requests in that time, but she had learned to recognize certain patterns. People who wanted to die sometimes chose strange ways to do it. They requested settlements on dangerous planets. They asked to be dropped in hostile environments with minimal supplies. They smiled when you approved their requests. Had smiled in her application video. I had watched it 4 times. The human had dark hair cut short and practical. Her eyes were brown and calm. She spoke clearly about her plans. She wanted to settle on Earth Designation 7. She understood the risks. She had read all the survey reports. She believed she could survive. That was the word she used. Survive, not thrive, not build a colony, just survive. I called in her assistant, a young named lieutenant, was new to the authority. She still believed that rules existed for good reasons and that following them would lead to good outcomes. I remembered being that young. What do you think of this request? I asked, sliding the file across her desk. Read it quickly. Her scales shifted color as she processed the information. Blue for confusion, yellow for concern. Finally, a pale gray that I recognized as sadness. She wants to die, said quietly. This is suicide. That is my assessment as well, I agreed. But we cannot deny the request. The planet is classified as open for settlement. Any citizen of the Galactic Authority can claim settlement rights to an open planet. That is the law. The law is wrong, said. I made a sound that might have been a laugh on a different species. The law is often wrong, but it is still the law. We will approve the request. We will provide the standard settlement package. And we will set a reminder for 6 standard months from now. A reminder for what? To recover the remains. The settlement package was delivered to 1 week later. It contained basic supplies, food for 3 months, water purification equipment, a shelter kit made of standard synthetic materials, medical supplies, communication equipment, emergency beacon. Accepted the package without complaint. She did not ask for anything extra. She did not request weapons or special equipment. She simply thanked the delivery team and began loading everything onto the shuttle that would take her to the surface. The delivery team leader, unnamed, watched her work. He had delivered many settlement packages in his career. He had seen excitement. He had seen fear. He had seen determination, but showed none of these things. She moved with calm efficiency, like someone packing for a trip they had taken many times before. "You understand the conditions on this planet?" asked. "I do," said. "You understand that rescue may not be possible if something goes wrong?" "I do." "You understand that the Authority has classified this planet as extremely hostile to humanoid life?" Stopped working. She looked at with those calm brown eyes. "I understand that 3 survey teams failed to establish a presence on this planet. I also understand that they were trying to live on the ground. I have no intention of living on the ground." Did not know what to say to that. He finished his paperwork, got signature on the final forms, and left. The shuttle dropped on the surface of Earth Designation 7 at midday, when the toxic mist was at its thinnest. She stood in a small clearing surrounded by massive trees that stretched hundreds of meters into the sky. The air was thick and warm and smelled of growing things. She watched the shuttle rise and disappear into the clouds. Then she looked up at the trees. Somewhere in her genetic memory, buried under millions of years of evolution, something recognized this place. Not this specific planet, but places like it. Tall trees, thick branches, safety in the canopy, danger on the ground. Smiled. It was not the smile of someone who wanted to die. It was the smile of someone who was finally home. She picked up her supplies and began to climb. They assumed it was suicide. The human built instead. Part 2: The Silence. 4 months passed on Station Omega 9. The seasons changed on a dozen different worlds. Ships came and went. Colonies were established. Colonies failed. The great machine of galactic civilization continued to turn, and no one thought about the human woman on Earth Designation 7. No one except Lieutenant. She had not forgotten, she had tried to forget. She had told herself that it was not her responsibility. The human had made her choice. The law allowed that choice. There was nothing could have done to stop it. But late at night, when her shift was over and she lay in her sleeping quarters, thought about that calm smile. She wondered if was still alive. She wondered if the end had been quick or slow. She wondered if anyone would ever know what had happened. On the first day of the 5th month was assigned to prepare the posthumous report. This was standard procedure for single-person settlements on hostile worlds. After 6 months of no contact, the settler was declared legally dead. Their assets were distributed according to their will. Their name was added to the memorial database. The file was closed. Pulled up the monitoring data for Earth Designation 7. Every settlement world had a satellite in orbit, watching and recording. The satellites were not advanced. They could not see details on the surface, but they could detect heat signatures, communication signals, and emergency beacons. She expected to find nothing. Perhaps a faint heat signature from a decomposing body. Perhaps the cold silence of an empty forest. She expected to confirm what everyone already knew. What she found made her drop her data pad. There was a heat signature, not on the ground where the toxic mist killed everything, not underground where the diggers hunted. The heat signature was 40 meters up in the canopy of the giant trees. Checked her instruments. They were working properly. She ran the analysis again. The result was the same. The heat signature was the right size and temperature for a living human. But that was not the strange part. The strange part was that the signature was not alone. There were structures around it. Zoomed in as far as the satellite would allow. The images were blurry, but she could make out shapes, platforms attached to the massive tree trunks, lines connecting the platforms, smoke rising from a contained fire. The human was alive. The human had built something. Ran to Commander A's office. She did not knock. She did not wait. She burst through the door and threw her data pad on the desk. "She is alive," said. "The human is alive." A picked up the data pad. Her 4 eyes studied the images. Her face showed nothing, but had worked with her long enough to recognize the slight tremor in her upper hands. The commander was surprised. "This is impossible," A said. "The data is accurate. I checked it 3 times. The ground level is toxic. The underground is filled with predators. The plants eat meat. The fungus dissolves building materials. How is she alive?" Pointed at the screen. "She is not on the ground. She is not underground. She is up there in the trees." I stared at the images for a long time. Then she made a decision. "Send a reconnaissance drone. Full sensor package. I want to see exactly what she has done." The drone arrived at Earth designation 3 weeks later. It descended through the atmosphere at night when the toxic mist was thickest. Its sensors recorded everything: the chemical composition of the air, the movement of predators on the ground, the bioluminescent glow of the fungal network. At dawn, the drone rose above the mist and flew toward the heat signature. What it found changed everything. The Galactic Authority thought it knew about humans. Had not just survived, she had built a home. The drone circled slowly, recording from every angle. The main structure was a platform roughly 10 meters across, built on the branches of 3 trees that grew close together. The platform was made of wood, real wood cut from the trees themselves. The fungus that dissolved synthetic materials could not touch it. Connected to the main platform were smaller structures: a storage area filled with dried plants and preserved meat, a workshop with simple tools, a sleeping shelter with walls and a roof to keep out the rain. The platforms were connected by bridges. Some were made of rope, twisted from plant fibers. Others were solid wood, carefully fitted between the branches. The drone counted 7 separate platforms in total, spread across a dozen trees. And then the drone saw. She was standing on the main platform, looking up at the drone with her hands on her hips. She was wearing clothes made of some kind of fiber, rough but functional. Her skin was darker than before, tanned by the alien sun. Her arms and shoulders showed new muscle from months of climbing and building. She was smiling. And Commander A watched the drone footage together. They watched wave at the camera. They watched her gesture at her structures with obvious pride. They watched her climb down a rope ladder to a lower platform with ease and confidence. "She built all of this herself," said, "with basic tools and raw materials." The survey teams never considered this approach, admitted. They tried to fight the environment. She worked with it. "What do we do now?" I did not answer immediately. She was thinking about 22 years of assumptions, 22 years of believing that some planets were simply too hostile for settlement, 22 years of watching colonists fail because they tried to force their way onto worlds that did not want them. And here was one human, with nothing but basic supplies and determination, living comfortably in a place that should have killed her. "Now," I said finally, "we send a delegation. We need to understand how she did this, and we need to know if it can be repeated." The drone continued to record for another hour. It captured cooking something over a small fire. It captured her repairing one of the bridges. It captured her sitting on the edge of her platform at sunset, watching the toxic mist rise from the ground below. She looked peaceful. She looked healthy. She looked like someone who had found exactly what she was looking for. The last image the drone recorded before it returned to orbit was holding something small and white in her arms. Something that moved. Something that made a sound that the drone's microphones barely captured. Enhanced the image. She stared at it for a long time. Then she turned to Commander O with an expression of complete confusion. "Is that a goat?" she asked. I had no answer. They assumed it was suicide, the human built instead. Part 3. The Canopy Kingdom. The goats had been greatest challenge and her greatest success. She had brought 3 of them in the original settlement package. They were a special breed, small and hardy, designed for colony worlds. The authority had included them as a food source, expecting to slaughter them within the first month when her other supplies ran out. Had other plans. Getting the goats up into the trees had taken 2 weeks. She had built a pulley system first, using rope she made from the inner bark of a tree she called the rope tree. The bark peeled off in long strips that she twisted and braided until they were strong enough to hold weight. The goats had not enjoyed being lifted 40 meters into the air. They had screamed and kicked and tried to bite everything they could reach. But once they reached the platform, once they felt solid wood under their hooves and saw the wide branches stretching in every direction, they calmed down. Now, 4 months later, she had 6 goats. The original 3 females had given birth to 3 kids. The bobbies were born in the trees and had never touched the ground. They climbed the platforms and bridges like they were born for it. Which supposed they were now. The goats gave her milk. The milk gave her cheese. The cheese gave her protein and fat and something that tasted like home. She traded the hardest work of herding for a steady source of food that did not require hunting. The hunting had been difficult at first. The canopy was full of life, but most of it was dangerous. There were birds with razor-sharp beaks. There were lizards that could spit venom from 10 meters away. There were things she had no names for, things that looked like a mix of spider and monkey and nightmare. But had learned to observe before acting. She spent the first month just watching. She learned which creatures were dangerous and which were just trying to survive. She learned that the venom lizards were only aggressive during mating season. She learned that the spider monkeys avoided fire and loud noises. She learned that the razor birds were territorial but predictable. She also learned what she could eat. There were fruits that grew high in the canopy, safe from the carnivorous plants below. There were nuts that tasted like almonds if you roasted them long enough. There were grubs that lived in dead branches, fat and white and surprisingly good when fried. Had built a smokehouse on her 3rd platform. She hunted the smaller creatures, the ones that could not fight back effectively, and preserved their meat for the times when fresh food was scarce. She smoked fish from the streams that ran above the mist level. She dried fruits and vegetables in the sun. Her workshop was on the 4th platform. This was where she made tools. The native stone was strong enough for axes and knives if you shaped it correctly. The wood was perfect for handles and frames. She had built looms for weaving cloth from plant fibers. She had built pottery wheels for making containers. She had built everything she needed to live. The greenhouse was her proudest achievement. It sat on the 5th platform, a structure of wood and something like glass that she had made from tree sap. Inside, she grew vegetables from seeds she had brought from Earth, tomatoes, beans, peppers. The alien soil could not support them but had spent weeks creating her own. She composted waste, both plant and animal. She filtered water through layers of charcoal and sand. She tested and adjusted until she had something that her plants could grow in. The first tomato had made her cry. She had not expected that. She had been alone on an alien planet for 3 months, living in trees, eating grubs and alien fruit, and she had been fine. But when she picked that small red tomato and bit into it, when she tasted something that reminded her of her grandmother's garden on Earth, she sat down on her platform and cried for an hour. She was not lonely. That surprised her most of all. She talked to the goats. She named the creatures she saw regularly. She kept a journal, writing down everything she learned about the planet. The days were full of work and discovery. The nights were quiet but not empty. The toxic mist rose every sunset, a purple-gray cloud that filled the forest floor like water filling a bowl. Watched it from her platform, warm and safe above the poison. Below, in the mist, large things moved and called to each other in voices that sounded almost like music. She had seen the predators once, early in her first month before she understood the rhythm of the planet. She had climbed too low at the wrong time and she had seen them emerge from the mist. They were big, bigger than any animal she had seen on Earth. They had 6 legs and long necks and mouths full of teeth. They moved through the mist like sharks through water, hunting by smell and sound. They had looked up at her, they had known she was there, but they could not climb and she was too high to reach. Since then, she had learned their habits. She learned that they gathered in groups before hunting. She learned that they avoided fire. She learned that dropping heavy objects on them from above made them scatter and run. The predators were not her enemies. They were just part of the planet. They did their job and she did hers. As long as they stayed down there and she stayed up here, they could share the forest. The carnivorous plants were easier. They were rooted to the ground, unable to climb. Some of them had long tendrils that could reach into the lower branches, but none of them could reach the canopy where lived. She avoided them, and they could not follow. The fungus was her only real problem. It covered the forest floor in a network of white threads, breaking down anything that fell. Leaves, branches, dead animals, anything organic. But it also broke down synthetic materials. Metal corroded, plastic dissolved. The standard building materials that the survey teams had tried to use lasted only weeks before the fungus ate through them. But the fungus could not eat living wood, and it could not eat properly cured native wood. Had discovered this by accident when she dropped a piece of dried branch into a patch of fungus and nothing happened. The fungus touched it, tasted it, and moved on. That was when she understood. The planet was not hostile. The planet was just different. The survey teams had tried to impose their way of life on a world that did not want it, had watched, learned, and adapted. Now she had a home, a small kingdom in the canopy built from the materials the planet provided. She had food, water, shelter, and purpose. She had the goats for company and the whole forest for her territory. When the drone appeared above her platform, was not surprised. She had been expecting someone to check on her eventually. She waved at the camera and smiled. She had so much to show them. They assumed it was suicide. The human built instead. Part 4. The Delegation. The delegation arrived on a bright morning when the mist had fully cleared. Commander had chosen her team carefully. 2 scientists, 1 and 1 human, a documentation specialist, a medical officer, and herself because she needed to see this with her own eyes. They wore full environmental suits as they descended through the atmosphere. The suits were rated for toxic environments, extreme temperatures, and biological hazards. They were heavy and uncomfortable and made simple movements difficult. Was waiting for them at the landing site. She was barefoot. She was wearing clothes made of woven plant fiber, loose and practical. She looked at their suits and laughed. "You will not need those up here," she said. "The air is clean in the canopy. The mist only forms at ground level." A look down at the thin layer of purple vapor that still clung to the forest floor. She looked up at the massive trees stretching toward the sky. She looked at, healthy and relaxed and completely at home. "We will keep the suits for now," I said, "until we have confirmed the conditions." Shrugged, "Suit yourselves, follow me." The climb was the first test, led them to a rope ladder that hung from the lowest branches. The ladder was strong and well-made, but it swayed with every step. With her 4 arms found it manageable. The others struggled. Doctor, the human scientist, was the last to reach the first platform. He was breathing hard and sweating inside his suit. He looked at with new respect. "You climb this every day?" he asked. "I built it," said. "In the beginning I had to climb without the ladder. That was harder." The first platform was small, just a resting point between the ground and the canopy. But even here, the air was cleaner. A's suit sensors showed the toxin levels dropping as they climbed higher. By the time they reached the main platform, the air was almost completely clean. A removed her helmet experimentally. The air smelled of growing things, of wood smoke and something sweet like flowers. It filled her lungs without burning. It was, she realized, beautiful. "Welcome to my home," said. "I call it the nest. Would you like the tour?" The tour took 3 hours, showed them everything. The sleeping quarters with beds made of woven fiber stuffed with soft leaves. The kitchen area with its cooking fire and storage containers. The water collection system that caught rain and filtered it through layers of charcoal and sand. The smokehouse with its racks of preserved meat. The workshop with its simple but effective tools. The scientists took samples of everything. The wood, the fibers, the food, the water. They recorded measurements and asked questions. Answered patiently, explaining how she had solved each problem through observation and experimentation. "The key is the wood," she explained. "Living wood and properly cured would resist the fungus. Everything on this planet is adapted to work together. The trees, the fungus, the animals, they have a system. I just had to find my place in it." "The survey teams tried synthetic shelters," Doctor said. "They failed within weeks." "Synthetic materials are not part of the system," agreed. "The fungus sees them as waste and breaks them down, but native materials are different. The fungus recognizes them, leaves them alone." They visited the greenhouse next. The human scientist, Doctor, was fascinated by the earth vegetables growing in alien-made soil. He tested the soil composition and found a complex mixture of composted organic matter, filtered minerals, and something that looked like bacteria but was not quite. "You created this from scratch?" he asked. "Trial and error," said. "Many failures before I got it right, but the planet gives you what you need if you look carefully. The streams above the mist level have clean water. The dead wood is full of nutrients. The animal waste makes excellent fertilizer." The goats were the biggest surprise. 6 of them now, roaming freely across the platforms and bridges. They had adapted completely to life in the trees. The kids had been born here and moved with confidence along narrow branches that made the delegation nervous. "Goats were not in the standard settlement package," said. "They were," corrected, 3 females. "They were meant as emergency food. I decided I would rather have milk and cheese and company." "You could have eaten them when your supplies ran out." Smiled. "Or I could adapt, find other food sources. The forest is full of things to eat if you know where to look. The goats were more valuable alive." The medical officer examined thoroughly. She was in excellent health. Her muscle mass had increased from all the climbing and building. Her vitamin levels were normal, sustained by the varied diet of native and earth foods. She had no injuries, no infections, no signs of disease. "This is remarkable," the medical officer said. 4 months of isolated survival on a hostile world, and you are in better condition than many space station personnel." "Not hostile," said. "Different, there is a difference." They ate lunch on the main platform. Served them grilled meat from a canopy creature she called a branch runner, vegetables from her greenhouse, and cheese from her goats. The food was strange but good. I found herself enjoying it more than the processed rations on the station. "I want to ask you something," said finally. "When you requested settlement rights for this planet, did you know you could survive here?" Thought about the question for a long moment. "I knew I could try. The survey reports told me what was dangerous, ground level, underground, synthetic materials, but they also told me what was safe. The canopy, natural materials. I read about what failed and asked myself what might succeed. The authority believed you were coming here to die." "I know," did not seem offended. "I saw it in the faces of the people who processed my request, but I was not coming here to die. I was coming here to live. To really live, not just exist in a station or a colony that looks like every other colony. I wanted something different." "And you found it." Looked out over her kingdom. The endless forest stretched to the horizon, green and gold in the afternoon light. Birds called in the distance. The goats wandered along their bridges. Smoke rose from the cooking fire. "I found it," she agreed. "And there is room for more, so much room. The forest goes on forever. There could be hundreds of platforms, thousands, a whole civilization in the trees." I considered this. A human colony built entirely in the canopy. No ground settlements, no underground shelters, just an endless network of platforms and bridges rising above the toxic mist and the dangerous predators. "Would you accept other settlers?" she asked. Smile grew wide. "I have been waiting for someone to ask. Yes, send me people who are willing to learn. Send me people who can climb and build and adapt. Send me anyone who wants a different kind of life." She gestured at the forest around her. "There is room for thousands." They assumed it was suicide. The human built instead. Part 5: The Revision. 1 year after first set foot on Earth Designation 7, Commander A returned. This time, she did not bring a delegation. She came alone on a small personal transport with no agenda except curiosity. The planet had a new name now. New Arbor had chosen it, and the Galactic Authority had made it official. The Death World had become a colony. The suicide mission had become a success story. A's shuttle approached through the upper atmosphere, and she saw the changes immediately. What had once been a single heat signature in an endless forest was now dozens of signatures. Hundreds. The canopy was alive with human presence. The main settlement had grown beyond recognition. Its original 7 platforms had become 70. They spread across the massive trees in a complex network of bridges and walkways, some made of rope, some of solid wood. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Laundry hung on lines strung between branches. Children ran along the walkways, laughing and calling to each other. 300 people lived in New Arbor now. They had come from every corner of human space. Some were colonists looking for a new start. Some were scientists wanting to study the unique environment. Some were adventurers seeking challenge. Some were misfits who did not belong anywhere else. Had accepted them all. She had taught them to climb. She had taught them to build. She had taught them the rules of the forest. Now they were teaching each other. I landed on the main platform, a structure that had grown to accommodate visitors. A young man greeted her and took her bags. He was barefoot and tanned and looked completely at home 40 meters above the ground. "Mayor is in the council hall," he said. "I will take you there." Mayor, I had not expected that, though perhaps she should have. Of course the colonists had organized. Of course they had chosen to lead them. She had built this place from nothing. She had proven that it was possible. The council hall was a large platform covered by a roof of woven leaves and branches. Inside, sat at a table with 5 other people, discussing something that involved a lot of hand gestures and pointing at maps. She looked up when I entered. "Commander," she said, standing with a smile, "I wondered when you would come back." Looked different from the woman I had met a year ago. She was still strong, still confident, still completely at ease in her environment. But there was something new in her eyes, a weight of responsibility, the look of someone who cared for hundreds of people and felt that care deeply. "Your colony is impressive," I said. "It is not my colony. It belongs to everyone who lives here," gestured to the others at the table. "This is the council. We make decisions together. Would you like some tea? It is made from a local leaf. Very calming." They sat on a balcony overlooking the forest. The tea was warm and slightly bitter and strangely pleasant. Below them, the daily life of New Arbor continued. People moved along bridges. Goods traveled on pulley systems. Somewhere, a group of children were learning to weave rope under the supervision of an older woman. "I have been revising reports," I said. "Many reports. 22 years of assumptions about hostile worlds, about what is possible and what is not." "And what have you concluded?" "That we have been wrong. Not about the dangers. The dangers are real, but about the solutions. We assumed that colonization meant building on the ground, constructing shelters that looked like shelters everywhere else. We tried to force environments to accept us instead of accepting them. Nodded slowly. That is what the survey teams did here. They fought the planet. They brought their own materials, their own methods, their own expectations. When those did not work, they declared the planet hostile and left. You did something different. I listened, sipped her tea, and looked out at the forest. The first month I barely built anything. I just watched. I watched how the creatures moved. I watched how the plants grew. I watched where the mist went and where it did not. I asked the planet what it wanted, and then I gave it that. The planet wanted tree houses. Laughed. It was a real laugh, full of warmth. The planet wanted someone who would live with it instead of against it. Tree houses were just the answer it gave me. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The sun was setting, and the toxic mist was beginning to rise from the ground far below. It was beautiful from up here, a purple sea filling the forest floor while the canopy remained clear and safe. I prepared death certificates for you, I admitted. After you left, I was certain you would not survive. I know. I saw it in your eyes when you approved my request. You were not angry. No, you were using the information you had. The survey said the planet was deadly. 3 teams had failed. What other conclusion could you reach? Set down her cup. But you were missing information. You did not know about humans. What about humans? We evolved in trees. Millions of years ago, our ancestors lived in forests like this one. They climbed and built and adapted. That knowledge is still in us, buried deep. When I looked at the survey reports, I saw what the trees offered. I saw branches strong enough to support platforms. I saw a canopy high above the danger. I saw home. Below them, deep in the mist, something large and hungry roared. It was a sound that would have terrified most beings. But here on the platform, surrounded by light and warmth and the sounds of human life, it seemed distant, just another voice in the forest. A child laughed somewhere above them, running along a bridge, playing a game that children had played for thousands of years, not caring that she was on an alien planet 40 meters above a toxic sea. This was her home. She had never known anything else. There will be more colonies like this, I said. The authority is already reviewing other hostile worlds, looking for environments that might accept adaptation instead of conquest. Good stood and walked to the edge of the balcony. There are so many worlds out there, so many places that look impossible until someone tries a different approach. Humans are good at that. We are very stubborn creatures. I joined her at the railing. Your mistake, I said once, was thinking you could survive here. And what do you say now? I looked at the colony, at the platforms and bridges, at the smoke rising from cooking fires, at the children playing and the adults working and the goats wandering along their paths, at 300 humans living comfortably in a place that should have killed them. Your mistake, she said slowly, was thinking we understood you. We have known humans for decades. We have studied you, worked with you, lived beside you. We thought we knew what you were capable of. And now I think we have only seen the beginning. Smiled and offered another cup of tea. Stay for dinner. We are having roasted branch runner and vegetables from the greenhouse. The children made a dessert from sweet root. It is quite good. I accepted the cup. She looked down at the mist, where predators hunted and poison filled the air. She looked up at the canopy, where humans had built a civilization in the trees. I think, she said, that I have much more to learn. In the distance, the sun set over an endless forest. The toxic mist glowed purple and gold in the fading light. Above it, safe and warm, New Arbor lit its evening fires and continued to live. And somewhere in the Galactic Authority's databases, a file was quietly updated. Earth Designation 7. Status: Viable Human Settlement. Notes: Revise all previous assumptions about hostile environments. Humans are more adaptable than previously understood. In the margin, someone had added a single word, understatement.